Good morning. I believe we're up and running. Good morning. I hope you all got a restful night's sleep and welcome. Today we're going to be doing a live tutorial demonstration thing of how to make a walk cycle in Blender using the little character that we've made. This guy right over yonder. Um, Probably going to hop right into it. And I think the difference between today and most of the days that I've just been working on stuff is frequently I'm like kind of only half-heartedly explaining stuff as I go along. And I think today we're going to talk like at length about sort of the thought process and kind of just technique behind what it is we're doing. And in order to start that process, the thing I'm going to do is we're just going to take a little bit of a look back at animation in general. And I realize I'm so sorry, I'm already forgetting something. I think, let me see if I can just find a timer on the internet. Does this have like a lap function? Um, who doesn't have a lap function? Timer with lap because we're gonna need one of these. So start. Okay, perfect. Thank you, timeanddate.com. All right, so let's take a look at just animation as a whole. Let's go back, right? So I actually went to school for 2D animation. And I had to learn animation in 2D, drawing by drawing, before I was ever allowed to learn animation in 3D, which is a bit of an interesting and backwards way of doing stuff. But there were a lot of things that you had to learn about and do in 2D animation that really help because they're less emphasized in 3D animation. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today and sort of discuss. So the first thing to understand is just the process as a whole, right? Which is this image. This image is taken from the Animator's Survival Kit by Richard Williams. So if you're interested in animation at all, I brought it out, but I realized like literally right before the stream that the second I like show anything white, my stream just cries and it's like, oh, I can't show that. But this is the Animator's Survival Kit as best as I can. That's kind of what the cover looks like. And I realized backwards for you. But it's written by Richard Williams, who is one of the great animators. At Disney, a long time ago, there was the 10 old men or 9 old men or something like that, or 12, I don't remember, somewhere in that range, who were kind of the guys who literally invented animation. Like, they invented it, basically. They were like, cool, this technology exists. How do we go about making it look good? And then they just developed it. And they all worked at Disney, and then they branched off to sort of do different things. You had some working at Warner Brothers and stuff like that. But of our more modern age, really the only great animator that we have left is Richard Williams. He is amazing. He died a few years ago, unfortunately. But anyway, this is taken from the Animator Survival Kit. And I wanted to highlight this first because this is the process for animation. And I feel like a lot of people, especially in 3D, because 3D makes it very easy to do so, they skip this right out the gate. Right? Is they're like, woo, I can make stuff go around, and they teach you all the keyboard shortcuts to do stuff, and you start making things right away. And you just skip over like the overall process that you need to go through. And so I really want to highlight this because it's important and it helps you a lot. And it's what we're going to be doing today. So to kind of break down what we're looking at here, I might actually go back a tab here and see if there's an image like this works just fine. So this is also taken from the Animator Survival Kit. I'll go ahead and open that image in a new tab so we can take a look at it here. And the idea is that you don't do a whole animation all at one time, right? If you were to try and just like, uh, yeah, no, he didn't. No, there's not. There's some things I can't do, but no, I do dabble in a bit of everything. So, you don't do an animation all at one time. One of the early mistakes that animators made, and I don't know, I'm hesitant to call it a mistake, but like before a process was officially developed, one of the things was that animators would just that you'd sit down and you would make a drawing, and then you would put that drawing away and you would go on and you would make another drawing that looked kind of like the first one. And you would just do that over and over and over again. And the problem with that is that things get weird, right? After you've drawn something like 80 times, and you're going to have to draw it thousands of times, right? But even really early on in the process, proportions start to get weird. Things start to change and shift around. Maybe you didn't draw like a Coke can quite as the same way, and now it's like starting to drift off to the side ever so slightly, right? So we came up with a process where instead of doing it the old way, which we came to call straight ahead animation, where you just go picture, 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 right? We came up with a process more like this. And this is what's called pose to pose animation. And the idea here is that I've got one first drawing here, which is called my a key drawing. And then we go over a little bit and you see there's another black key drawing over there. And then you go a little bit further past that and there's another key drawing. And what these key drawings do is that you can almost think of them as a storyboard. Um, is that they are, or like comic book panels, right? Is that you can look at them and say, like, okay, I understand what it is the character is doing, right? Like, I understand that the character is supposed to kick in the door and they come in and then we see the villain in the shadows, but the hero doesn't notice them right away, right? So we have those key drawings, and then we're like, okay, I understand the action that's being presented here. Um, After you have those key drawings, you go in and you do what are probably called the extremes after that. So here, each of these red drawings is an extreme. And since we're not doing a particularly like elaborate motion at the moment, we use just each sort of footstep as an extreme for our little walk here. So he walks over and he goes over and then he lifts up his pant leg and he grabs down and he grabs the chalk and then he goes and he starts to write something. Um, so you might consider in that little sort of like crime drama example is the hero like kicks in the door, but like how do they kick in the door? Do they do like a Spartan kick? Do they do like kind of a like they just push it open with their foot? That's what you would use extreme drawings for, is to kind of communicate how things are done. And then you would keep adding on top of this, is you would do another set of drawings and another set and another set and another set. And by the end of it, what you've got, actually that last one worked well. Is I don't know if you can see how well on the far top right there. I realize I'm not working with the highest resolution images, and that's even worse resolution. But you have just this massive overlay of shapes all over each other. But when you show those to a camera, like one image at a time, it looks like a beautiful, smooth animation. So this is called pose to pose, where we start breaking it down movement by movement, right? The problem is that this also is not the ideal way of doing things, right? um, and part of the reason why it's not ideal is because animations look very stiff and weird and like almost alien in a way because they're so rigid and perfect, right? And there's no sort of spontaneity to anything characters do, right? So you can imagine maybe like just I don't know how far I want to go down this rabbit hole, but the point is that pose to pose, it doesn't feel great. It feels very, very, very technical. There's very little like artistic expression to it, and then on top of that, it also has a weird sort of stiff quality to it. So this is not great either. So if we can't do straight ahead and we can't do pose to pose, what do we do? And that's why I wanted to highlight this, is because this is really, really important. So starting at the very, very top, just reading through, we've got our storyboard, right? And then or layouts, and we look through and we're like, okay, this is what goes on the scene. And then we do our key drawings of what's supposed to happen. And we do extremes, right, of like large actions to really, really break down, okay, this is what their punch looks like. These are the motions they need to hit in their punch. And once we've got this point where we've got like a really good idea of what's going to be going on and what the action's going to look like, then we stop using pose to pose and we just animate totally freely and lucid like on different parts. So you do one arm, just whatever feels good, and you do one leg, whatever feels good, and you just go bit by bit, and then just animate and making sure everything just is like having fun doing art stuff, right? So with this in mind, we're going to create and break down how to do a walk. And that's sort of, we're going to apply this sort of traditional animation technique to 3D animation. So where do you start with that? Well, the first place you start is with something that, again, doesn't exist in 3D. I had to learn what one of these was really early on. So this is called an X sheet or an exposure sheet. And what this is we can see there, these are essentially frames of animation or frames of, on the far right over there, are all of the frames in whatever animation is we're doing. The camera, like back when they were doing animation, is you'd put like a drawing down, then you had a camera that would have a dial that had a numerical counter for how many pictures you had taken and where you were in the process. And so on the far side there, that's exactly what that is. And what you do is you actually lay out in like traditional animation how long things take visually, right? So here we've got this guy who's like screaming here. And if I go up to a point where I can point, like right here, we can see that he starts making this like backache thing on frame 17. So if you follow this cell all the way over on frame 17 is where he starts this process. And I'm assuming what he's doing here, just based off of like looking at this, is there's kind of like a yawn or something like that. I don't know. But the motion of just and then like being done with that action takes this long, right? So if we look at Blender, all we've got down here is our timeline, this timeline for like how long things are supposed to take. And a lot of people just treat this as a timeline to like look and be like, oh, I put that frame ahead or I put that frame behind. But this really should be used as a tool, I think anyway, to recreate things like this so you know what we're doing, right? And the reason why I pulled out a timer is because the very, very first thing we're going to do is we're going to time out essentially how long our, we're going to time out essentially how long our footsteps we want our footsteps to be. I don't know if, does this even register on the mic? Barely. I'm gonna make like a beat, right? Like at some kind of like interval, and be like, this is how fast I want my footsteps to be, and then we're just gonna start the process from there. So normally I would get up and I would actually just like walk with my phone, and I would use like the lap function on the timer on my phone to just time how long my footsteps are. But here, I'll just go ahead and sort of click and make like a rhythm that I feel is like a good walk here. I'll say it's like, and we can see, if I go ahead and pause here, that a lot of these times, right, in orange, tend to be around 0.6 seconds, right? And that is a pretty darn good time for just walking. About 2/3 time is what tends to be like sort of the default walk, is you take a step every 2/3 of a second. Or I'm sorry, yeah, 2/3 of a second. So with that information, we now know everything. Like there's so much we know. It's super cool. So let me pull up a calculator. Right. So it takes zero point 0.6 seconds, we'll say, for me to go from one step to the next step. So my foot is making contact with the ground every zero point 0.6 seconds, right? And the other thing we're going to do that's kind of interesting is a lot of games run at like 30 frames per second, 60 frames per second, 120 frames per second. But if you go learn traditional animation, you'll usually animate at 24 frames per second, which is like sort of the standard for movies and stuff like that. We're actually going to be animating at 30 frames per second today, which is sort of a non-standard number of frames. So the reason for doing this sort of calculation here is, okay, I'm supposed to take one step every 0.6 seconds. So here I've got 0.6, right? And then I'm animating at 30 frames per second. So I'm going to multiply that by 30 for 30 frames per second. And that means, awesomely, right, is that every 18 frames, I need to be taking one step, right? So I timed it out. I'm like, cool, this is how fast my character steps, right? And then I multiply that by how fast my animation needs to be, which is 30 frames per second. And I get, okay, that rate that I was going on now has like a frame number attached to it. So every 18 frames is when I need to have a step. So I'm going to plot that out. Normally, that's a thing that I would plot out on something like this, right? But I'm going to plot that out in Blender. And we're going to sort of just get this ball rolling here. So here I'm in the animation workspace for Blender. I've got the sort of workspace up at the top and I selected animation. The only thing I did was I changed this top left window over to curves or the graph editor because I think it defaults to like down here is your dope sheet, and then up here is like something, I don't know. And then this area down here is going to be my action editor. I'm going to click on this big new button right in the middle, right above my timeline, and I'm going to make a new action, and I'm going to call this walk cycle. Perfect. And one of the first things you can do is you can use markers in your timeline. So if I just press M as in map, I will create a marker way down at the bottom here. I don't know if you can see this little guy right here. If I select it and then sort of hover over it and press F2, which is kind of a universal rename key, I can give this marker a name, and I'm going to rename this L contact. And then I'm going to move forward 18 frames, right? So it's at frame 18 that my step has ended and I've begun the next step. So depending on how you're doing things and just the timing of things, I would either say that this is the start of my new step. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go one frame past this to frame 19 and say that this is the start of my next step. So I'm going to relabel this R contact. And I'll explain the contact and everything in just a moment. So now I've got left contact, right contact, and I need to go forward 18 frames again. Note that it's not all the way up to 36, that we've got to go like 18 from here. So this is frame 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Or it is, and I'm just dumb. No, it is. I'm just dumb. I'm sorry, I can't math. So yeah, this is 18 frames past where we want to go. And I'm going to go to 37, and I'm going to put down a new marker, and I'm going to call this L contact again. L contact. So this is the speed at which our character is going to be walking, right? And this is based, normally I would stand up and I would like walk around, but then I wouldn't be on camera and you wouldn't see anything, so that's probably not a good demonstration. But like we actually timed out a speed at which a person is walking, converted that to frames per second, and then laid that out on our timeline so we can see all right, this is how long this process should take. And what's cool about doing it this way is that now like I have a very clear roadmap for what it is I'm trying to animate rather than just going in and jumping in right away. But we can do even more to this, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this guy down here. This is the root of my whole character. So if I move this around, everything moves around. Like the whole character moves around if I do this here. What I'm going to do, oh, I'm sorry. I realize I've skipped something. Not a big thing, but I should go back to here specifically. This is a framework for making a walk, right? Again, this is taken from the Animator Survival Kit, and this is a really, really good reference for essentially how to animate things. And we see that a walk is comprised of a couple different parts. So we've got our contact here, and then we've got another contact in the middle, and then on the far end, we've got our final contact. So, and specifically, this is with the character's right leg forward. Then the middle one is with their left leg forward. And then we make a complete loop all the way back with their right leg forward over at the end again. What you've got in the middle of that process is this drawing here, which is called the passing position. And you can play with that and do all sorts of stuff. And then there's two other important parts to the walk. So we've got the contact, the passing position, and then we've got a point where we've got a down and an up, right? So up over here, down over here. And the idea is that the down is when you fully put your weight on your foot, and the up is when you're pushing off with that foot in order to make the next contact. So this is going to be the framework we use for making our little walk here. So that was something I probably should have brought up a little bit earlier. Let's go back to this. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move my character's feet just a little bit here. I'm going to bring their overall, I hid some of these controls. I'm going to bring their overall like sort of center, which is this, just down just a little bit, just a smidge, right? Just so that their legs are not stretching every time I grab them. So here you can see the leg stretches way out. I essentially don't want that to happen. We'll move that forward just a little bit. We'll move this back just a little bit, and we'll roll up the foot and move this back. So here I'm going to bring this down just a tinge till it looks about right. And I'm going to move the feet also to where they look a little bit more reasonable here. Perfect. So this is going to be the stride of my character. Okay. Now, first thing about animating in 3D that is like a recommendation from me versus what other tutorials might teach you is other tutorials will do this thing where they have your character walk in place, right? And if you're doing an animation for video games, that's really useful, right? Because you want your character to walk in place, and then you've got like sort of an outside framework that is what is in control of your character, right? And it's that outside like collision that moves, and then your character just plays an animation inside of it, which is cool, right? The thing is that when you animate a character walking in place, like just doing this like sort of like ghost walk, you're going to encounter this issue where their feet slide around. Like even if you do everything correctly, their feet are going to slide around once you put them in a game. And it's because they were animated without any sort of like frame of reference for anything going on around them, right? Like there just wasn't a thing that it's based on, right? So my recommendation is whenever you're animating something, specifically for games, especially for games, always animate the character actually doing the thing it is that they are supposed to be doing. In this case, our character is walking forward, so I need some way for my character to move forward while I animate them walking, right? And that'll just look much better in the end. So what I'm going to do is I've got this here. I'm going to take just my root bone here. I'm going to press I to insert a keyframe, and I'm going to insert one at this location. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this foot, right, this leading foot here. I'm going to use my 3D cursor as kind of a marker, and I'm going to set this right here at the toe of the foot that's planted on the ground, right? And I'm going to quick take all my bones and I'm going to copy them. So Control C to copy this to the pose buffer. What that means is just if I press Control Shift and paste, it'll flip the legs around. I don't know if you can see right here as I can flip the pose of the character, right? Anyway, so I've got my toes here, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move forward on my timeline until I've made contact for my next step. So we know that that's going to be right here is when I make contact for my next step, right? I'm going to quick flip my character's pose, and then I'm going to move this root bone forward until the toe is at that marker I placed. And then here I'm going to insert another keyframe for the location of my root bone. And just to be safe, we can do that one more time and just double check here. So I'll do that there. Move forward to my next marker on my timeline. And let me grab everything, flip the pose again, and we'll move forward to here, and we'll do I location, right? So let's play this animation and just sort of see what happens. I'm going to reduce the length of my animation so they're going to have to watch 120 frames every time. So here I've got this, and all that's happening is my character is just moving forward. But what's cool is all of this is based on actual information, right? Which I can't even begin to explain how often people don't work that way, right? Like people just will yeah, cool, I'm making a walk cycle in place. I didn't time out anything. I didn't measure anything. Just, this looks good. This looks about like what it's put. Don't do that. Don't just say, yeah, this looks correct. Like actually measure it out. So we measured out the rate at which we walk, right? We converted that to frames, and we specifically converted it to frames for games, right? We didn't convert it to 24 frames per second. We converted it to 30 frames per second because we're making a video game, right? Then we set up a gate or a GAIT, like a step length of our character. And then we measured that out and set it up so now that our character literally moves at the distance with which they step, which is awesome. And what we can do, and this is the really, really exciting part about this whole process here, is if I pause and I go back over to my graph editor, right, you can set up what are called extrapolation. Oh my goodness, words are going to be hard tonight. There's let me see if it. There's interpolation, which is how it goes from frame to frame. But there's extrapolation, I guess is how it would be pronounced. Extrapolation, which is how everything happens on either side of your animation. So long story short was what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab just this value here, which is controlling the like sort of forward movement of my character. I'm going to right click on it and or Shift-E, and I can say do linear extrapolation. And that turns this now into a constant line. So let's make my animation really, really, really long now. And what we can see is that from the start point, my character will move, or the root bone of my character will move at this speed indefinitely, right? For as long as my animation is. Now they're moving just off into the distance. So as I create this walk, and all I need to do is create one complete step. That's all I need to do. As I do this, I can animate it in such a way that my character is actually walking off into the distance. I don't have to do the weird like floating in place thing. I can actually animate my character walking, and this is the speed based on the size of their step and the timing we did earlier that they would need to be walking at. Awesome. So that's what we're going to do, and we're going to just start doing it one step at a time here. So with all of this set up, and I lied, wouldn't I need another right contact as well? Hold on. Doom, doom, doom. No. No, I would not. Right? Yeah, no. So, this is our setup here. This is how we've got things going on. I'm going to add in just for the sake. Oh, no, we'll get to that in a minute. I'm going to add in just for the sake of clarity for myself down here, right? Is I've added in left contact, right contact, left contact again. And I'm going to go back to this. So these are the things: left contact, right contact, left contact. And I'm going to add in just a few more markers for myself. Is I'm going to add in the passing position on either side. And I might even add in the down and the up position either side on my timeline just as markers so that I can keep track for myself. So this first one I'm going to try and do it halfway between the two. The issue is that we mapped it out and my step is 18 frames, right? The problem is that there's not a number halfway between, there is no halfway number between an even number, right? So like if you take 4, for example, there's no number in the middle here, right? There's 2 over here and there's 2 over here, but because it's an even number, there's no like middle number. Whereas if I take 3, for example, right? I've got this number over here, this number here, and then there's a number in the middle, right? This is one of the reasons why, even though my walk is 18 frames, this is why I bumped the next frame over to 19, is now I actually have a middle frame between these 2 frames, which coincidentally is 10. So this is exactly halfway between my 2 markers. And as you start to divide actions up, sometimes you can divide them in half evenly and nicely, and sometimes you can't. And you'll have to make decisions based on whether or not you can or can't. So fortunately, I can put this here and I can say that this is pass position, nice and in the middle. That's fantastic. And then this should be, oh my goodness, let me do a little bit counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Perfect. And then this should be I might be losing my marbles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Nope, not losing my marbles. And then this is going to be my other passing position. Can you have markers with the same name? I don't know. We'll find out. Yes, you can. You can have markers with the same name. So these are where my passing positions are, is that they're exactly halfway between each step. But the issue is that this is a really, really good example of how now I don't have a halfway point between my passing position and my contacts. So for this, and coincidentally, that's why animators started animating on 24 frames per second, is that it generally divides very, very nicely. And why walks are always of a certain speed is it just divides nicely. Because we're animating at 30 frames per second, our divisions are going to get a little weird here. So on one of these 2 frames, and it's my choice which, we're going to have the down position. Okay? Just talking out loud about like sort of the thought process, because this is the point where we're putting our weight on the foot, I'm going to say that that's easier to do. It is going to happen faster because it's like we're just agreeing with gravity, right? So we're going to fall down onto the foot that we're using to step forward faster. So between these two frames, I'm going to choose the frame that's earlier to be my down position. So I'll put in a marker there, and I'm going to label it down position. Likewise, for literally the exact same reason, right? As we start to push up, over here, I also don't have a nice frame in the middle. But because we're fighting against gravity, I'm going to say that that takes a little bit longer, and I'm going to put that on the later frame in the animation. So this is an example of just like that kind of the thought process of like why you're doing things. I might change this. One of the nice things about animating in 3D is that once I put these frames in, if I don't like them, I can move them around until I'm blue in the face. I could animate all of this just frame after frame and then redo all of my timing afterwards. It's not a luxury you have in 2D animation, but we can do it here if we want to. And then I'm going to call this up. Or, I'm going to call it push instead. Push position. And I'm just going to do that same setup on for the other leg, and then we're going to start animating our little legs doing stuff here. So here we've got between these two, I have to choose one of them for the down. I'm going to put a marker here. Say this is down position. And then moving right along, I have to pick one of these two, and I'm going to call this the push. No one saw that typo. Push position. If you really want to know, you can go back and see what I wrote. Anyway, so this is now our X sheet, right? This is our exposure sheet for how long our walk is supposed to work, right? And like a good animator, we have it set up in such a way that our character is moving so we can realistically plot out each of their steps. And that's basically how we're going to work from here. So let me go ahead and save just in case anything goes horribly wrong. And we'll go back, and the only two bones I'm really going to be worrying about controlling off the bat are these two footprints and inserting location and rotation frames for these. And then my foot roll on each foot that sort of controls that. That's all we're going to worry about right now is just these things. So here, I'm going to go ahead and we'll do, so this is, oh no. Control yourself. And I can go ahead and hide the root bone because I don't want to select it by accident. And I don't really need these either. So here I've got this. I'm going to press I, and I'm going to insert a keyframe for location and rotation. Coincidentally, I know I've mentioned in Blender several times about how important knowing keyboard shortcuts are. When you press I for insert keyframe, you'll notice that every single one of these options actually has one letter that is underlined, right? So here it's A, L, R, S, and then like he, V, this is T. Location and rotation specifically has a T underlined. So if I press I for insert keyframe, I can press T, and I know that that will insert a keyframe for location and rotation. So that underlined letter is the following keyboard shortcut in order to do whatever that is. So now, anytime I want to do location and rotation, which is what you do most often, I'm just going to press I and then T, and then I'm set to go. So here we've got this, IT, perfect. Going to grab this foot, IT, perfect. Grab this one, IT, perfect. Now then, here's a part where just talking about animation, I'm going to be really like adamant about this, is that if you are on a deadline, if you are trying really, really hard to do something really, really, really efficiently, what you should do is you should take all of these bones, you should copy them, and then you should paste them, but mirrored for the next step, right? So now if I press play, we do this weird kind of like slide, which doesn't look good, right? If you're trying to be efficient, if like your job is to do this as quickly as possible, then do it this way, right? However, there are so many strange little idiosyncrasies with everything that we do that if you're trying to make a good, realistic walk, don't just flip your pose, actually animate each thing along the way. Like I will figure out the how long my next step is supposed to be once I get to my next step. I don't copy and just flip everything because then it will look very robotic and symmetrical. So I'm going to take all of these keyframes and I'm just going to get rid of them completely. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go instead to my passing position. I don't want to go down, even though I have a marker here, I don't want to go to my down position just yet because that's like more minute. I'm still trying to be as like macro focused as possible. So I'm going to go to my passing position here. Okay. This foot should still be where it was. So I'm going to put my little marker here for my toe. This is where my foot should be. Okay. So when I go up to passing position, right, I now need to move my foot so that it is in that same location, right? Because physically, I have not moved. My character has not moved. So I'm going to grab this, IT, and I'll do that. So now I've got a foot, and it does a little jitter in there. We'll talk about that in just a second, right? So contact, I move forward to here, boom, we've got this, okay? Then I'm going to go forward to right contact, and here I need this. Hello! Is that the Chris I think it is? Chris from the Electric Playhouse? I'm assuming it is because of the way you spelled Chris. So for here, we'll take this foot because this is where this foot is supposed to be. But now we're doing the contact of our right foot, right? So I'm rolling my foot up here. And then we'll do IT for this and IT for this. So now we've got our foot kind of staying in that position as we move along. Perfect. Welcome. I feel like you've actually seen part of this tutorial before. But yeah, welcome. Hello. Thanks for tuning in. We're doing a tutorial on walk cycles today. So, now we've got these three keyframes set up. We've got this one, and we've got this one, and we've got this one. The problem is and let me bring the length of my animation way back down, right? The problem with this is that as our foot makes this step here, you can see there's all sorts of weird sliding that's going on. There's all sorts of weird sort of janky stuff. There is a lot that you could do to go in to fix this right now, right? And it's very, very, very tempting to go in to fix that, this like sliding left foot that we've got. However, if you go in and even that phrasing, like, oh, you go in order to do this, the reason why that's problematic is because you want to work from big to small. If you're drawing, you work from big to small. If you're animating, you work from big to small. If you're doing anything, you should always try to go kind of from big to small because it like helps keep you organized and focused. And so if we start messing with why our foot isn't doing what it needs to do right now, what's going to happen is we're going to essentially leave behind and abandon this process. And we don't want to do that, right? We want to adhere to this process as much as possible. So the way I'm going to do that is for everything, I'm going to select everything. I'm going to click on channel. And then this is where we go to interpolation, which I believe is shortcuts with T. Yeah. And I think I can just select everything and start, and new keyframes will be done in this way. We might have to do this each time we add in a keyframe for a new part, but for the most part, oh, you know what? Let me just select all of these. Yeah, there we go. So for everything for just this one front foot that we're concerned with here, Oh, and I realized I didn't do one for the passing position. I don't have a roll here. Alt R I T. So for all of this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select both of these bits, which are for my left foot here, and I'm going to press T, select everything, press T, and choose my interpolation. So for the root, we used extrapolation to make it so that it goes on kind of forever, right? Even longer than our animation, that movements exist beyond the length of our animation. What interpolation does is how do we go from frame to frame? How do we do that? And if I go over into my graph editor here, you can see that one of the ways that we do that is with smooth sort of curves over here, right? In order to stay focused on what matters about our motion, which is mostly timing and spacing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of my keyframes, hit T as in toggle, and I'm going to set the interpolation to constant. Now, what will happen is if I go back and I go into my animation, I hit play, you can see that the foot is doing this snapping. And it's doing that snapping, and actually I should do that for the... It's doing that snapping because we've now set it to be like essentially constant. Like, so hold one position until we get to whatever the next position is. Because the movement of our character is smooth, this looks a little less than ideal. But on the whole, I'm going to say that that will keep us more focused. And as we add in the other leg, you'll start to see why. So let's go ahead and do that now. Here I'm on my contact. And I am going to do one thing here, which is I'm going to take sort of all of these and I'm going to copy them. And on the right contact, I'm actually going to just momentarily place my other foot so I can see roughly the area where my other foot is supposed to go. And then I'm just going to remove that information. So here at my right contact, I'm supposed to be here, here, here. And then my right foot is supposed to be somewhere up here, the toe of it. Pop that right back down. And I'll actually do this up just like that. And there might be a little bit of working that I need to do to get this correct here. But I'll take both of those and I'll just go ahead and insert keyframes. Then I'll go back to this passing position. And it's in here that my foot needs to be like swinging through. So I will set that up as well. Grab this, clear the rotation. Grab this here. And I'm going to move it up and then kind of rotate it to be something like this. I'm going to turn on, I'm going to look at it from the other side so I can sort of see what I'm doing. Your feet, your toes, when you walk, your toes get crazy close to the ground. It is amazing that we do not trip over more things in our day-to-day lives. IT. And so now, if I select all of this, I should have keyframes on every channel for each of these three positions, which is great. I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to quick grab all of this and just make sure everything is set to constant. Nope. All of this. Make sure everything is set to constant. So now, let me click that over one more as well. So now, boom, 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 right? So this is our first step. And I'm using the up and down arrow keys on in Blender in order to sort of change these, right? So this is my first step. And what's great is that we can see that even though we've got that sliding because our character is moving forward, right? If we just flick through the frames, we can see the step is doing kind of exactly what we want. And we're going to set up the whole thing like this, do the whole walk, then we'll go through and animate it smoothly, and we'll do smooth, straight ahead animations on each of the parts once we've got all of these poses set up. And then the nice part is at the very end, you can take that root bone, remove the animation from it, and your character will walk in place, and it will be extra convincing. So that is the process here. So let me go through, and I'm actually going to go ahead and continue setting up these steps. So we'll go through to my next passing position. Oh, no, I need to do a little bit of a measurement here. So this is where this toe is supposed to be for the contact. So we'll go here, here, here. That toe will like go down. And I realize on the first contact, I actually messed up in that this is supposed to be rolled back like that. So I might have messed up my foot spacing just a little bit. That's fine. That's stuff we can adjust. I'll do IT over here. Perfect. And then we'll move forward to our oh, I keep losing track of what I'm doing. So that's where that foot is supposed to be. I'm going to quick grab all of this and just see roughly where the left contact position is, like where measuring out where my toe needs to land for the next one. And despite what I said about mirroring your steps and how you should not just copy and then reverse, like mirror paste each of your poses, if you are doing a loop like this, you should use your first frame as your last frame. So here I'm going to go ahead and grab this. This is my first frame with my left foot forward. I'm going to grab everything here and I'm going to go paste it over all the way to left contact, like such, and then insert keyframes for that. The reason for that is because it's supposed to be a looping animation, right? While I don't want my left and right steps to be perfect copy, like carbon copies of each other, because it feels slightly unnatural, if I don't have perfect carbon copies of my first frame and my last frame, there will be like a little jitter thing that happens as it loops. So if you are making a loop, that does need to have an identical first and last frame. And then this frame right here, frame 36, is where our animation will end. So it starts on the contact, and then it ends one frame before the contact, so that when it starts over again, it's with that frame that it's supposed to go to. All right, so somewhere in here, this is where this toe is, so I need to go to the passing position. This needs to not be rolled, and this needs to slide back to about in here. So I'll grab both of those, insert keyframes, and then I need to do a passing position for this, which we'll do as something kind of like that. Grab both of those, insert keyframes, make sure that all of this is good to go. And now if I flick through, our character sort of is doing a little walk here. And that's perfect. That's exactly what we're supposed to have, right? So boom, 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 right? And we're doing this walk as we move along. Our character is actually moving. Again, it'll look a bit weird because we have sort of staccato tiered movement on all of the steps, but the actual base is like moving forward. And I don't think there's a way that, unless I go in and add a bunch of extra keyframes, I don't think that there's a way I can break up the root movement. But that works fine. That works fine. So now that we have this and we're still working on specifically like the extremes and breakdowns of this walk cycle, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the down position and push position of each of these. So these are the frames between everywhere else, right? So let's grab this here. This is where this toe is supposed to be. And I'm going to grab specifically the location and the rotation for this. And I will copy those. And since it's not supposed to move at all, we'll go ahead and paste these right here and insert new keyframes for them. And then for the push position, this is the first point where our foot is like starting to push off the ground. But I'm actually going to say that this is still right here. Oh, goodness, goodness, goodness. Do. Game? Am I losing my mind? I might be losing my mind. I am losing my mind. I'm so sorry. Here, this, let me put a little 3D marker down so I can see what I'm doing. Sorry, this is where your foot is supposed to be at this point, Mr. Man. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, don't try to tell me otherwise. Boom, boom. Yeah, and then over at the push position, we are in the same place still, because our foot is supposed to be right here. However, um, the I'm actually going to say that our heel is still on the ground. This is like the last conceivable moment where the heel of our character will be on the ground, right? So here we'll just sort of like clicking through and watching the step happen, like boom, 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 boom. Yes. And that's where I think the last possible point that our character will still have the heel on the ground before we get this like sort of pushing up motion. So even though this is the push position, our heel is still on the ground because I decided. Alrighty. And now we're just going to do all of that exact same stuff for the other foot here. So we've got this, and I'm going to quick grab a little bit of a marker for my location. This is also another thing I really love about Blender is that the 3D cursor is useful for so many things, even just like doing on-screen measurements. Like when you're drawing, you always see people with a pencil. It's called sighting. It's a way of measuring things. And in 3D, being able to like create little, always have a fake little measurement that you can make is super useful. So we'll go to here, do this, pull this back, go here. Someone was like, "Oh no, I got here late. Start over." No, but that's why it's a recording. Is you can watch it. You could watch it on the thing. It's great. Um, so we've got this here, and then so boom, 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 and I'm going to go somewhere in the middle, and I'm going to make sure again that this is the last possible point that our foot is on the ground, and I'm going to insert keyframes for that. So now, if we take a look, and what you'll notice is that we're actually missing something. So we did if I highlight everything I've got for the left foot here, we can see we focused really hard on the foot for this and the poses for the foot for the step, the one that's on the ground, but we haven't done any of the frames for the foot that's already being pushed off the ground. So we need to do that for both sides. So I'm going to go back to the beginning and I'm going to select these. And now I need to do the down position and the push position for the off foot, as it were. So here, this is where it was. I'm going to move forward a bit. And this foot has now come off the ground, right? It's getting ready to get to this position. So we need to make sure that that's kind of where it is and what it's ready to do. So in this down position, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get rid of that roll completely, rotate this, and put it there just sort of like that. So boom, 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 boom. Excellent. So now as we do that, and I can even bring it forward a little bit. I wasn't going to, but we'll start to bring it forward just like that. Yes. And now we've got to get to the push position, which is the part where you're kicking that off leg out in front of you to get ready to put your heel down. That's sort of the important part of this process here. And I know because I have essentially this marker here that this is where I'm trying to get to. I'm actually going to put this right here for the moment so that I know where my heel is aiming, right? And then I'll move this forward, move this out, and do down just sort of like that. And I'll leave it a little bit above the ground for the sake of, I don't know, animation's sake. So now if we watch both of our feet, not just the foot that's on the ground, but also the foot that's swinging through, we should see most of our motion here. So boom, 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 boom. and then it goes down onto the ground. And then we need to do the same for that swing through for this foot over here, right? So this is the pushing off position. We're fully off the ground at this point, still kind of in this area. So I'll select both of these. And I can use up and down to see how far my toe is sort of moved forward here, which is fine. I like that. I'll move forward. And then I need to see where my heel is going to land again. So I'll put my heel here. And then back on this push position is I'll say like, okay, this is where about your foot is going to be. Now, again, I did have the option of just copying and flipping each of my poses over. But again, I stress, try not to do that for like a left and a right side, because it will get weirdly robotic and weirdly symmetrical. And people just are not very symmetrical. We're, in fact, deeply not symmetrical. So now, if I go through and I flick through these frames, we should have kind of a convincing walking thing going on over here, right? Which is cool, right? It'll look a bit weird, again, if I go through and I do the, I turn on the motion, the speed that we set up, but all in time, all in good time. And you know what, I believe, let me actually save where we're at. The mode that I turned on, the interpolation mode of flat, that makes it so that the animation looks like this, so that it looks choppy, right? That's a very easy thing that we can turn on and off, right? So if I just take that whole same thing and I go back to Bezier, right? This actually should look a lot nicer, right? There's some stuff going on. We're going to need to do some stuff, but this is the start of like a really good walk animation. And actually, let me do one more thing before I go back, is let me unhide this. Let me see if I can just take all of that and delete the keyframes. And so now this is our walking in place, right? So this is what we'll get to do at the end, is after we set up this walk so that he actually walks along a distance, you just remove that from the root bone, and then all of this should take care of itself, which is great. So let me undo all of that so we can get back to our jagged animations here. Perfect. So, dum, 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 dum. Perfect. That is the keyframes, breakdowns, and extremes of just our feet, okay? I'm going to go in and I'm going to add a little bit more, and because I realized that this is going much faster than I thought it would, or time is moving much faster than I thought it would, we're going to cut a couple corners, because animation is not fast and there's still things I want to show you. So now we're going to start animating this. This is my character's this part, right? So we need to animate essentially just them doing a slight bob up and down as they walk. Here I've got the left contact. I'm going to just say that this is my neutral pose. I'm going to say put in a keyframe right here for contact. And then I'm going to do the same thing as we're going to go all the way over to the next contact, which should be at the same height. And I'm going to insert another keyframe there, and I'm going to do that all the way again for the left contact. So whenever our feet are first making contact with the ground, our overall height should be the same, right? However, we've got a down position, a passing position, and a push-up position, and those are where things are going to get a little bit different. In our passing position, let's refer back to good old Richard Williams, just to make sure, right? Is in the passing position, our total height should be almost at its, like just slightly above average, right? Is we're starting to push off the ground, so it's just slightly above average. So here for my passing position, I'm going to take my little controller here, and I'm going to move it up ever so slightly and say that this is your new passing position height, is it's just starting to get up there. I'm going to grab this, I'm going to copy it, I'm going to do the same for my other passing position, right? Oop, except it helps if you insert a keyframe. I don't use, there is, coincidentally, if you turn on your timeline, I don't know if you can see down down right, this little tiny dot is record keyframes, so that whenever you go to a frame you move something, it will automatically update that information and make keyframes from it. I do not use this unless it's for very specific cases, because if you're not careful, you will add in a bunch of extra frames that you don't mean to. And so I would always rather have to go back and redo a frame I forgot to put in than accidentally have information that I don't know where it came from down the road. So no, I don't use the auto keyframe, just in case anyone was going to ask. Anyway, we'll grab this. We'll go back to here, IT, and we should be good. Though that's not looking like how it should look. There we go. Okay, cool. So now our character, if we flip through, should have a little bit of a bob to what they're doing here. So perfect. Sound effects also are like critical when you're animating. So for the down position, which is where we're at here, this is the part where our character's actually sinking their weight pretty heavily on their foot, right? This is them like pressing down so that like the weight of gravity is like, yes, I've solidly put my weight on this foot. So I'm going to put this here and then insert a keyframe. I'm going to take this same thing, in part because this is a symmetrical controller, right? This is a controller for like the whole body. This, by all means, copy and paste away, right? This is not any sort of minute mirrored thing. This is just the overall sort of like, it's a long line of symmetry. You can copy and paste this guy all day. So I'm going to copy the down position here. I'm going to go up to this down position, paste it, and insert a keyframe there. And then we're going to do one for the up position as well, where this is sort of even, just a little bit higher, all the way up here. IT, copy, boom, IT, perfect. So now if we hit play, we can see our character does like a little tiny bob as they walk along. I'm going to do the same thing I did for the feet, which is I'm going to take all of these keyframes and I'm going to turn their interpolation mode to constant. So it's just as sort of blocky as everything else. And that's fine. And that's good. That's where we are making good progress here. Again, just doing the breakdowns and the sort of keys and extremes for all of this. See, he is strutting. He's like, oh. So, we're going to do this process of the keys and the breakdowns and the extremes for all of the parts that we want to animate. And I'm probably going to do this just for, I think, the hips and the torso. Because I don't think I have the time to do the arms. But we'll do just the hips and the torso. So now going back through, we need to animate the hips, right? Depending on if this is a... So there's two movements that your hips are going to do, okay? The first movement is that your hips are going to do this, right? As you walk, your hips are going to cha-cha back and forth like this as you take each step, right? That motion is largely dependent on the sex of your character, okay? Females have much wider hips, and so there's a much more noticeable degree of sway on this axis when a female character walks than as to opposed when a male character walks. For male characters, it still sways, but like for women, it's way more exaggerated, okay? That's one motion that is going to be gender specific. The other motion is this motion from the top down. This is another motion that's going to happen as your character literally is just dealing with the fact that like one leg is going in front of the other, right? You're driving your motion of the leg with your hips. This is the like driver. So you might think, funnily enough, that like, oh, because this you know what, and let me actually spin this around real quick. You might think, oh, because the left leg is in front, therefore my hips should be tilted with like the left part of my hip in front as well. And funnily enough, is that for this one frame for the contact, that's kind of true. But the second you start moving in such a way that you're trying to swing your right leg forward, immediately your hips need to do this in order to drive that movement, because all of your motion originates in your core. In your hips and your chest is where all of your motion originates. So depending on the gender of our character and depending on how kind of powerful their walk is, we need to like go in and minute adjust each of these things. So we'll do this one axis at a time, just because I want to. If you're like really good, you can do it both axes at a time, but I'm not really good. So here I've got left contact and our weight is equal for the most part. I'm going to say that this is how I'm going to insert this keyframe. Go for that crazy Stone Cold Steve Austin swagger. Woof. That is out of the scope of this demonstration. Truthfully, though, this is a great example of a place where if you need like a specific kind of walk, right? The first goal for an animator is to be able to create a character that walks, and that's kind of what we're doing today. But lots of people walk lots of different kinds of ways, right? And if you've played any degree of video games, you know that walks and runs get wildly different, right? I'm laughing because I'm doing I'm even going to get up to show you, right? I play a lot of like Dark Souls and FromSoft games and Elden Ring and stuff like that. And because they've got these like big weapons, whenever they run, they do this weird like thing because in theory they're holding like these huge weapons, right? So they've got this weird kind of like dual grocery bag stance that they like run to, which is amazing. And then like in other games where I imagine if you like Naruto ninjas from like Ninja Gaiden or something like that. Anyway, the point is that you can make all sorts of different walks and runs, and hips are a really good way to control what a walk or run looks like. Anyway, contact, we're going to say is kind of neutral because from this angle, contact is kind of neutral because your weight is evenly distributed between both legs. So I'm going to go up to right contact as well. Same thing. And I'm going to go all the way to the next left contact. It looks like I undid. I'm sorry. Let me rename this key down here. Down position. Perfect. So as far as this sort of sway is concerned, for each of our contacts, our weight is split between our legs, so we don't want to have any particular way left or right. However, for the passing position, like this, right, I'm going to give a slight tilt towards the side that is now supporting my weight, right? So because this leg over here is the one that has the weight on it, I'm going to do a slight tilt away from it. Ever so slight here. Boom, just like that. IT, okay? Now then, I'm going to go to the other side, the other passing position. Again, that middle pose. And I'm not going to copy and paste because, again, even though this is a like line of symmetry controller, I'm still talking about like a left-right difference between the two. So I'm going to do this just by hand and whatever feels right. Do that up. Boom. Okay. Now for the down position, right? Where we're really sinking our weight down onto this foot. I'm probably going to do just the same thing. I think is I'll maybe exaggerate each of these just a little bit on the down positions. Just do like a little bit more extreme IT. But for the push positions, Do, 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 do. For the push position, I'm actually going to swing kind of hard back towards neutral. Um, that way, it's ready for our weight to be distributed between our two legs again. So pretty hard push towards neutral. So now we've got kind of a sway there going on. And for this, same thing as always, is I'm going to take all of this and turn the interpolation mode to constant so we can see our character doing our walk. So this is the left, right, and I can see, just looking at this, right, that my character moves their hip slightly more up on the right side with each right step than they do with each left step. And I could fix that. I could actually go in and edit that out. But this just goes back to a thing where it's like, this doesn't look bad. This doesn't look like anything is going horribly wrong. Like our character's not mutating in any way, right? And little idiosyncrasies like that will add a lot more life to your character because they're not perfectly symmetrical. So basically, the rule of thumb, because I realize this is, again, a line of symmetry control, just if you have to do anything on the left and right side, animate them both individually, and it will make your character appear more grounded in an actual character. So this is our hips from this front axis. Let's do our hips from the top axis now, and then we'll be good to go here. So contact, as we've just like put our foot forward, I'm going to do a slight tilt here and then redo my keyframe. I'm going to go to right contact, do, oh my goodness, rotate along this axis ever so slightly and do my other contact here. And then I'm going to go back and grab my first keyframe because I do need it to be identical. So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to go all the way to the end and make sure that that is identical. You get points for knowing the word sachet. I did gymnastics for a long time and I had to sachet on my floor routines. And then we did do the right contact. Okay, so for passing position though, right, is this is going to have a really extreme tilt towards the leg that I'm driving forward, right? Because I need that bone, and we'll do it over here on this other one too. I need that to be like really far forward, as that is my hips are driving that leg forward. So I'm going to do this on either side. And for the down position, right, which in theory is sort of an intermediary thing. This is the thing I was talking about where you would assume, let me turn the camera around again here. You would assume that given the orientation of my legs, my hips should be like this. I'm sorry, the orientation of my legs, that my hips should be like this. But because I'm driving that right foot forward, this is where I need to tilt it so that my right hip is pushing that leg in the direction that it needs to go, right? We'll do that for the down position as well. Boom, IT. And then finally, for the up positions, right? This is where we're sort of finishing off having just driven our leg forward, right? So a very, very slight bend towards the leg we've just put in front. Such. And now, assuming I'm able to like keep track of my own brain here, that should be doing perfect. Right? So now we've got our hips moving, and they're doing this like multifaceted, multi-axis movement, right? And that's important. Just talking about other walk cycle tutorials, I also can't tell you how many tutorials I've seen where they don't do the hips or they do weird stuff with the hips, right? This is important because your hips move. If your legs are moving, your hips are moving. It's like a critical part of the process. So Um, just keeping an eye on the time. We might just do that. This is a great place to sort of like we've demonstrated this process. We've talked about hips. The thing about your arms, and this is kind of a tricky bit to do, is that your arms do need to lag behind ever so slightly by a couple frames everything else that's going on. Your hips drive your legs, right? And your legs are performing active movement, like super active movement. Your hips are in control of that. Your torso responds to that. All of that is roughly on the same kind of timing. But your arms, as you get further and further down to your hands, are just sort of dangling, right? They're not really doing anything. They are acting as a counterweight, but in many ways they are like just chilling, right? And because of that, because they're doing something that's it's a like following action, they do need to lag a few frames behind your legs, for example, because if they happen at the same time, like if your arms and legs move in perfect opposition to each other, like on the same frames, you'll get one of those weird grocery bag runs. Anyway, so we'll just do the feet and the hips, which we've done. And we'll go back to our process. And now we've done the keys, we've done the extremes, we've done the breakdowns. Now we get to do the really fun, freaking cool, exciting part, which is straight ahead runs on different parts. Now we're going to toss out basically all planning and just have fun. And this is awesome. This is like the best part of animating is that you get to do this. There are a few things I'm going to do though. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the start of my animation, right? I'm going to select just these two bones for my left foot, and I'm going to go back to my interpolation, and I'm actually, let me just take everything. Yeah, let's just take everything that we've animated. And I'm going to set T, and I'm going to do my interpolation back to Bezier, right? So now we still have a kind of a smooth motion going on. What's causing? Oh, I forgot we animated the control for his height as well. So let's take that and we'll put that on Bezier as well. Yeah. So now he's just sort of moving and doing his thing. Again, this is supposed to be a walk. It's a very casual walk, like boom, 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 boom. Oh, you know what I also never set, and I realized this, and I'm so sorry. And this is part of the reason why it looks like it's moving in slow motion. We might have to do like just a smidge of adjusting. But here in the scene on the right, it says my frame rate is 24 frames per second. That is supposed to be 30. Uh, and if we change that, luckily that didn't change any of our frame numbers. So we're still good. So yeah, boom, boom, boom. Perfect. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, buddy. Now there are some bits that are jittering, right? We can see that like the foot's freaking out a little bit here. There's some stuff going on. But this is a great example of like now we get to go in and fix whatever we want. We don't have to worry about all sorts of other stuff going on. One of the things I'm going to try and turn on, which, oh my goodness, it has been a while since I've had to turn this on, is the ghosty mode. Ghosty mode. I might actually have to quick look up a tutorial on, or like a thing on where this motion paths in range. Yes, calculate. No. Around frame. There we go. 10 frames before and 10 frames after. Hey, how's it going? We're just doing some animating today, some animating. Around frame, calculate, hit OK. And what this is doing is not showing me the thing. It's showing me something, just not the thing I want it to be showing me. Yeah, it's basically onion skinning. So if you've used other animation softwares before, there's a way you can turn on the like path of whatever it is you are working with. And I haven't actually had to turn on onion skinning or even just muck with any of this for a hot minute here. Oh, it's because I'm on the object. That's why. That's why. Viewport display. Maybe it's in the armature. Motion paths. There we go. In range. Calculates. Yes. No, not in range. I still want a round frame. There we go. Calculate. Cool. There we go. Perfect. I was on the wrong thing. So yeah, so what you can do, and just again for the sake of anyone who's curious, right, is with a bone selected and making sure, unlike I was, that you were in the correct one. So the armature data, that's where you have motion paths. There's different ways you can set this up. I prefer to do a round frame. And then when you hit update paths, this gives me 10 frames before and after my current frame to sort of see what is going on. And here I can see that there's a lot of movement for my ankle, which is kind of the end of my thing. And so I'm going to try and go through the process of sort of evening that out so that there's less of that going on. But I can go in and I'm just, again, this is a straight ahead run. So all I'm doing is going through and having fun and being like, this is what the path of my ankle should be doing, right? So here at frame 28, and you can go to any of these frames and sort of adjust all of these out however you want, right? So I'm going to go to frame 28, and I'm actually going to say I want to lift my foot a little bit higher, right? Insert a keyframe there, update my paths, and now there's a much nicer sort of arc and curve to the motion that foot takes, right? Here, back on frame 23, and I don't know if you can actually see the little numbers there, but I do have little numbers for all of this. I think that's just, I'm going to move it just a bit further back and redo that guy, right? Just like such. Over here, there's a lot of stuff going on. To clean this up, I'm going to look specifically at my graph here. And I'm going to just, here, where's the part where he takes off from the ground? He takes off from the ground. Ooh, no. We'll say frame 19. So I'm going to highlight just these frames here. And it's specifically this should be the Y location. We can see that part of what's happening is that like oscillating, that little bit of like of wiggling he's doing is because I've got this graph here, and it's very not smooth, right? There's kind of a wavy rise to this whole thing that's going on. What we want is for that to be kind of like once that foot got planted down, it stayed there, right? So all I'm going to do so is I'm going to go in and I'm just going to get rid or I'm going to move this, break this handle here, right, to this keyframe. And we'll move it up just a little bit. Break this handle to this keyframe. Where's my, somewhere I should have a button, handle type, free. Yeah, break that. And now I'm just going to take these 3 keyframes that I put in here. I'm just going to get rid of them. Boom, boom, boom. And now all I want to do is just make sure that this is nice and flush leading from one keyframe to the other. So now if I do that and then hit update paths, we should see, and we'll check, right? Is that foot is going to stay pretty much just locked right in place there. So boom, 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 boom. There's a very, very slight amount of movement, but nothing I'm worried about. Last thing I'm going to do is, this is the last frame where in theory this sort of heel is on the ground. I'm going to start to go probably like 2 frames ahead, and I'm going to update the point at which we move from using the foot control to using, or the like foot roll control to the whole foot control. So from here, I'm just going to say, you know what? 1 frame later, take this, just reset that whole thing and insert a keyframe there. And then take this, and then this is where we'll worry about the location of this guy. And I'm specifically going to move him up to right about there and tilt him just a little bit more. IT. So now if I update paths, That's maybe a bit too extreme. I might need to move it just a bit further down. Update paths. Because there is, and you can find these online, but there is a very specific shape that your feet make with each step in an animation. I'm essentially just from memory trying to align that more to what that shape is supposed to be. I can see another place like right in about here where I want to bring this just a smidge higher. I'll just insert a keyframe. And maybe that's a bit too high. Pull it down just a bit. Perfect. So now I've added in a minimal number of frames. I've even taken out frames out of certain channels. And now let's just see what happens with this first left foot, right? It looks like there's a pop that's happening with the here. And the pop that's happening is because, oh, hold on, I have a question. Do you worry about the toe clipping into the ground, or is it so small and quick that it's fine? For the most part, it's going to be so small and quick that it's fine. This is being concerned with like what degree of thing are you worried about, right? So like let's say, for example, that there's something very specific about my character's feet. Like I'm imagining maybe I've got like an anthropomorphic rabbit character and you can see the pads of my feet as I like walk. That might be something that you need to be more concerned about. Is that making sure that like those pads of the feet are like visible and they're not clipping into the ground. But things like minor clipping, in general, like it's especially if it's part of like a fast motion here, they don't need to be huge concerns in part because like they're so sold by another action that's going on, which in this case is walking, that it doesn't matter, right? Like unless you're walking on concrete, right? If you're walking on dirt, right? I mean, no one's going to notice in the first place, but also walking on dirt, yeah, your feet sink into the ground. I'm not saying it's a good practice. Like you shouldn't try to make things clip, but it frequently is less of of a problem than your brain wants you to think it is. So going back here, there's actually a problem I need to fix, which is that the leg pops at one point. And this is something you need to be careful with inverse kinematics. This pop is happening because I decided to, over the course of one frame, transition from using smoothly from using the foot control and the roll control to just using the foot control. And in doing so, we go from here. And watch the knee in particular. The knee is the thing we're looking at, right? So here, everything's good. Then there's a big pop, and then it pops right back as the foot tries to come up. So what I'm going to do just to fix that is on this frame here, right? This is where my knee is. Again, using the awesome 3D cursor because that thing is great. I am just going to go ahead and introduce a little bit more roll back onto this thing. I was going to get rid of it completely. I'm going to do insert keyframe there, move one frame forward, and then delete it by this frame. So insert keyframe there. So over the course of these keyframes is it getting deleted, and now we should have no more popping of the knee. Perfect. And this is all just me doing freeform, right? Like I'm not concerned with frame numbers. I'm not concerned with counting anything. I'm just sort of like going like, oh yeah, that looks good. That looks not as good. Oh, there's something that's gone wrong here. I need to fix this thing. And just sort of doing that and that whole process. So you would then go through, because and I can probably do this for the other leg as well. Or you know what? Let's see if there's anything with the hip. No, we'll do the other leg. Since this is supposed to be a walk cycle tutorial, right? Is again, going back to this process is once we've done the really hard and tedious part, which is setting up the major landmarks for our animation, then we can have fun. Then we can be free, right? So maybe maybe let's say this is kind of a bad example. Let me save before I do this because we might go into a rabbit hole right now. Okay. Let's say that throughout this process, um, I've got my step here with my left foot. Everything's doing great. It's exactly what we want it to do. And then as he starts to take his next step, I want him to instead move his leg way out and do like a weird kind of like crane step for some reason. Go full mummy. That's actually, I will absolutely do that, and I will do that for exactly the reason that it will look like his arms are doing something more so than what they're doing right now, which is nothing. Yeah. Good call. Good call. Good call. Now it actually looks like something intentional is happening. Oh man. Anyway, so let's say that I want him to do like a weird sort of like bird-like step with each of his steps, right? I have created the framework for the walk cycle, right? Again, I get to do straight ahead runs on whatever I want now. Now I can make it look however I want, right? So here, with these motion paths turned on, let me make sure just that they're updated real quick. What I'm going to do is right after his foot gets off of the ground, and it's going to be a bit strange because he's only going to do this with one leg, right? Is we've got here, okay? And I'll go ahead and insert a keyframe there. And then we'll move up to this keyframe. We'll turn and move this around, IT. IT. Let me do update paths here so I can see what's going on. We'll do IT like this. And then we'll get to here and do IT. So let me update these paths, right? And actually, probably out ahead. T update. So that we have a nice curve, because animation is all about curves. If animation is about anything, note that it is about curves. Isn't there an auto update? I swear there's like a thing that auto updates your motion paths. Perfect. So now let's see what our walk looks like, right? Because I did all the hard work. I laid it out. I've got my key poses. I've got stuff. This is just me doing essentially in 2D you would call these the in-betweens, right? So now let's see what our someone said John Cleese would be proud. And if you don't get that joke, you should get that joke. So yeah, so one of the things here, right? And this is just a cool bit in general, is he is kicking his foot out way out in front, right? Let me hide this, right? And so we can see he is now doing this like pop. But the other thing that you can see from sort of the onion skinning here is that there's let me move it forward here, right? These dots each represent frames where the white dots are frames with no information, and the yellow dots are frames that have information. And part of it is that through this point up in here, right, like right in here, he's moving his foot forward way too fast, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change kind of the direction that's going in. So I'm going to take this frame, I'm going to move it way back here, like this. IT, update. I swear there's an auto update somewhere. I just don't know where it is. And then I'm going to move this up and out just a little bit more like this. IT, update paths. So all I did was I moved around the frames. That's literally the only change between where it was at and what I've done. Boom, boom, as I'm just moving frames around because I can. And that's super awesome. Let me go back to actually to 23 here, and let me put that down just a little bit lower like that. IT update. So now let's see what our walk looks like. Yeah. Now he's doing the weird zombo thing, right? However, for everything that's going on, let's say that I've finished my animation, right? Let's say that I've finished and this is how I want it to be, and everything is good. The issue is that I need this to be in a game now, right? And the problem is that my character is actually moving and I need them to not do so. Let me go ahead and unhide this guy that we did forever ago. I'm just going to take these keyframes and I'm going to delete them, and then I'm going to reset his position. Okay. So now we're ready to put this in our game. We've made our walk cycle. We've done all of the steps, right? We counted out using a stopwatch how fast we wanted our character to be taking steps, right? We converted that to frames, specifically 30 frames per second, not 24, which is what most animators learn on. We calculated it to be something more conducive to games, which is what we're working on, right? So we animated this on 30 frames per second. We calculated the rate of our walk cycle to 30 frames per second. We mapped it out on our timeline down here, so we knew where all of the major beats of our walk were. Then we went through and we laid out all of the keyframes, all of the extremes, all of the breakdowns, so that our animation is good in doing what it needs to be doing. And then we started to have fun. We started to experiment and we started to play around and say, like, no, that now that I've got the structure there, I want the character to do a wild kick with just his left foot, because I don't have time to do the other one. Right? And it's just during the passing position there. But we've played with it. We used motion paths and stuff and all the cool 3D tools in order to create this. Now we simply take the thing that was making our character move forward, which I forgot to mention in this grand list of things that we've done, and I just removed that. So now our character should walk in place. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I'm going to hide all of this, and now this is our finished wild zombie walking animation, right? Where he puts one foot very flamboyantly out in front of him each time. There are other little things, right? You can see that there's a weird stutter here. Let me actually try if I bump that up. Yeah, there's a weird little stutter in the hips, right? That we would have to work out. There's a couple other weird things that are going on, weird little stutters, but all of that is just fine tuning, right? The important thing with animating sort of in this way, and the reason why I wanted to show this off today, is because this was made possible, and the ability to play with it and make it really wild and fun was made possible because of animating like this. If you were to go in and you were to do just the straight ahead runs and you were to do just the like fun part with none of the structure that came ahead of time, like the first hour and a half of today's stream, right? The problem is that now someone asked, we just removed the root motion? Correct. I just removed the root motion, and now we have walking in place. There was a way we calculated earlier what our root motion speed should be. But yeah, here we are. Anyway, the fun and the experimentation and the wildness is able to come out because we started off with a very, very definite structure. If you just start in, the thing is that none of these positions would exist. You'd have frames all over the place. And most importantly is you would have no way to know just what, like, this would look like a scrambled mess, right? We wouldn't have these clear columns of designated positions. It would just be like keyframes all over the place as we're trying to do stuff, right? And that is sloppy, bad animation. And that's what I see all of the time. I see people going in and being like, yeah, okay, this looks like about the point, and maybe that's happening too fast, so I'll slide this over, and then we'll do that, and we'll slide this over, and whoops, I forgot to put in a keyframe here. And they just go at random, and then you get something that kind of works, but first of all, you can't edit it at all. Like you can't change stuff around with any degree of control because you don't even know what you did. But on top of it is that if there's anything that goes wrong, or if you needed to pass this off to someone else, heaven forbid, you would be up the proverbial creek, right? So the whole point of today primarily was just to really, really highlight the importance of this. This is important. If you're going to animate, especially animate in 3D, take time to set up a storyboard, take time to set up your idea of what's going to happen, set up your keyframes, do your extreme poses, do your breakdowns, do it all in a way where it's not distracting. That was another big thing we did, is we did this all with the constant interpolation on. So our character looks like this. And this is the cool part, is that for basically all of this, right, our character still looks good, right? Even though we've got, I think there's one thing in here which is not being interpolated correctly, which I'm not sure even what it is. But the point is that like this still looks pretty good. Oh, I see what it is. I don't need to go in and fix it. But the point is that like we did it in a way where we could be focused on the poses, we could be focused on the extremes, and we could be focused on the keyframes without being distracted by all these fancy motions and tools, right? And once this looks good, then we can go in real smooth like and make sure that everything else is doing fun, cool stuff, right? So that's animating in 3D. That's a workflow for you for how I feel it ought to be done. I think one of the things that we could fix and would take like all of 2 seconds to fix is this. Oh shit. Yeah. That'll probably fix a lot. It's very rigid now, but that's fine. Anyway, yeah, any questions? Anything anyone was like, well, how did this happen? Or anything like that. Last minute stuff. Also, I'm pleased for the record at a number of things that are still going well. The deformation of the hips. I did no weight painting on this character. This is all just normal character. This is going to be our guy that we're running around with in our game, coincidentally. This was not this animation, obviously, but this will be the thing that you're sort of running around with. And he's got all the stuff going on he needs to do. Clear feet, clear hands, animating the ghost and stuff. I will probably have, just schedule-wise, a number of basic animations. And by basic, I mean like an idle, a walk, a run, maybe just that. Hopefully done by Monday or in the process of being finished up by Monday, specifically for this guy and for the spirit body. So we're going to have, try to have the animations for the 2 characters, or the basic movement animations done for the 2 characters by Monday. Because today's Friday, right? Yeah. So we'll have those done by either the start of or early next week. And then we can hop into figuring out how to network this game on Steam, which the ideal world that I want to be in is that there's a thing on Steam that you'll require a Steam key from me in order to interact with. And I can basically go through and post like updates, and I can push updates, and just anybody who's downloaded the game, you just get automatic updates to the game, and that would be great, right? That way we can start building all of the mechanics of how the game is supposed to work bit by bit, and people can play it and it'll be fun, or we can make it fun rather, as we go along. I'm starting to lose my voice. So that's the goal, is that before the end of next week, the system will be set up so that there are things that can be animated and edited and changed. Values can be adjusted. Mechanics can start rolling out, and you all can play by the end of next week. I will, for the record, in case anyone's curious, only patrons on Patreon are going to be getting. I don't know if it'll be Steam keys or invites or what how it'll be working because I've never done an online game before on Steam, so I'll have to figure that out. Um, but for the in development process, that's going to be available initially exclusively to patrons or the adventurers, which are the patrons. So that's where that's going to be. But hopefully by Friday of next week, it'll be a thing where you can just download and play. You could literally play with me, and there won't necessarily be a lot to do, but we can run around and we can have fun with each other. And then we can start building things from there. So that's the plan. That's the goal. This is how animation works and how I'm going to be animating everything. Um, GG's. I'm sorry. I feel like if anyone's watching this like retroactively, they're going to be like, "Wow, we were like really good and really methodical for a long time, and then we took a really rapid turn towards abbreviating and skipping corners. 2 hours might not be enough. I've been trying to stream for just 2 hours, but like, man, it goes by fast. Sometimes it goes by really slow, but like this went by lightning fast. I was like, yeah, so the very initial step of animation is, oh no, it's almost 2 hours. I mean, the last step is this. Here you go. Oh boy. But yeah, that's the plan. I like it. I think it's going to come out well. I think initially we're going to differentiate between characters because I don't have any characters yet. I did ask everybody over on Discord what kind of preferences they had, if they liked like realistic characters or human characters, or if they want like anthropomorphic or mythological creatures, or if they just wanted me to go off the rails and come up with whatever the hell I came up with, which coincidentally was the most popular choice. People just want to see whatever wacky stuff, but I don't have any characters yet. In terms of visual design, I have ideas for or I have ideas and plans for how they're going to work mechanically. Just no like visual stuff. So I think for a while we're gonna use this guy, and he's just gonna be different colors, for to differentiate between teams and characters. So there'll be some exciting day where Fabio becomes, instead of just red generic guy, he becomes like, oh, he was a dragon the whole time. That makes so much sense considering what he does, uh, or whatever. But yeah, literally all of the framework will be in place. Yeah, again, hopefully by Friday. We'll see. Again, I'm very nervous for next week. To be perfectly honest, I'm very sort of fearful for what will be in store, because I don't know how Steam integrates with Unreal Engine. I don't know how Steam does anything. I've never put a game on Steam before. This will be my first. I don't know if I need to invite people. I don't know if I'm going to get keys. I don't know if I'm going to even be able to use. In theory, from all the research I've done so far, Steam should allow and enable me to use their servers to connect clients. But I don't actually know how that's going to work, or if it's complicated, or if it's going to involve more steps than peer-to-peer connections do. Um, that's all to figure out. Actually, and I appreciate you, Subliminal. Do you mind if I ask you some questions about Steam? I was really tempted to ask you, but I also have been just distracted by everything I've been doing in the meantime. Uh, but yeah, do you mind if I ask you a couple questions about Steam? Because I know you've had experience with that. Hold on, there's one more thing I'm going to change here. Yeah, perfect. I will do. Thank you so much. Let me unhide real quick the there we go. Let me just real quick. Oops. Oh my goodness. Because you gotta have the arms being out, right? Like no zombies chase someone like this. That'd be awkward. Perfect. Yeah. Awesome. But yeah, that's the plan. That's where we're at. That's the lesson for today to get that sort of guy going. Um yeah, things and stuff. I appreciate you guys for popping in here. That's pretty much a wrap for our 2 hour session today. Maybe I'll one I forgot. I took yesterday off to begin working on making this little like banner advertisement thing going on much nicer. And I stumbled upon an idea and a plan for how I want to do that, which I am working on, but it's going to be a bit more time than I thought. So this might be ugly for a time longer, but when it's done, I think it'll be really good and really pretty. So with that said, we'll get all that squared away. Thank you guys for tuning in this evening. I'm gonna go ahead and sign off and enjoy your weekend. Get some rest tonight. Get some rest over the weekend. Play some games. Come back and tell me what games you played. We'll do some stuff. Oh, and then also, and if you're still here, Subliminal. So Subliminal is another member of the local game development group that I don't attend nearly enough because I'm bad at everything. But Global Game Jam is coming up soon. So if you don't know what a game jam is, it's a very like time constrained window to make a game from scratch. And there's one in January. It's the Global Game Jam. It happens around the world, and I will be participating, which is in a weekend closer to the end of the month. I don't know how many weekends away it is right now. I believe not this weekend and not next weekend, but the weekend after. So the weekend of the 27th, the 26th, and the 27th and 28th. It's going to be the Global Game Jam. And I will be participating in said thing. So we're going to have a break from working on all of this to do something fun. I will probably stream throughout a huge amount of that process, assuming whoever I'm working with is okay with it. So, yay, Global Game Jam. It'll be fun. Anyway, sorry, I keep distracting myself. Thank you guys for coming in. You have a good night. Take care of yourself.